So here is another problem that you'll see. Now, in this case, you've got the same situation for all three of these. So be very careful on the test that, there's going to be a question that has a less than, and one that has a between, and one that has either an at least or an at most or a more than, something like that. Basically, all the different directions. But you'll have different situations. So it's not going to be one problem altogether. This will be three separate questions that may or may not have the same situation. And even if it has the same situation, because of the randomly generated numbers, may not have the same values. So double check your numbers. In this case, though, just to make it easier, I've got the 506 and the 11.8. If you're watching this before the bonus for number 7 video, then you may not know that I already have these numbers in. But that's what we have. We have SAT critical reading scores are normally distributed with a mean of 506 and a standard deviation of 11.8. So I like to write those things out just so I have them. And then, of course, I've got those over here in StatCrunch as well. I've already put those in. First thing I want to do is find the probability that a randomly selected test taker has a critical reading score less than 494. So on your paper portion, where you'll be finding this probability and either typing the answer in or selecting it if it's a multiple choice, on the paper, that's what this part down here is asking. You're going to label and shade the normal curve, and then be sure to include the probability statement in proper notation. So what that means, in this case, for this first one, is that the probability that x is less than 494. There we go. Well, I need to mark, so label and shade. One thing I need to make sure I label is my mean of 506. I need to draw a line over about 1 standard deviation away. And remember, I'm not going to get too picky about it, but you're kind of looking for where the graph stops being a dome and starts being a bowl. And so, if you have that here or here, any of those are okay. Just be careful. Don't get it too far over, because then that's just going to get, I don't know, just we want it to be somewhat reasonable. And we want to label that as well. So we'll put 11.8. The other thing we need to label is our specific x value. So in this case, 494. Well, 494 will be somewhere to the left of 506. And I'm, again, not going to be picky of where. So 494. Less than means I'm going to shade to the left. So and that's got my 6 points, right? Remember that there's a point here, a point for drawing this line, drawing this line and labeling it, a point for shading, a point for drawing your horizontal line and labeling it as the standard deviation, and then a point each for the right symbol and the right number. So those are your 6 points. So if your question that you answer is a less than, that's what this would look like. If the question that you answer is a between, so let's start over. So first of all, for the probability, if we're doing between, we want to start off with a number. I don't know why I wrote a 2. 497. Always less than or equal to x in the middle, and then another less than or equal to 512. far as labeling goes, I'm going to need my 506. My pen's not wanting to do a very good job right now. There we go. Standard deviation of 11.8. 497 is over here to the left. 512 is somewhere over here. Technically, it should be closer to the mean since, only if I do 506 plus 11.8, that would give me 517.8, which would definitely mean that this would need to be somewhere here instead. But again, I don't like it to get squished along the bottom, and I just need to make sure that my general area matches with what StatCrunch, the probability that StatCrunch is trying to give me. So in this case, since I do already have my 506 and my 11.8, I actually didn't find the probability for A, so let's do that one first. I need to go back to, there we go, the standard part of the calculator, and the mean is fine, don't need to change that. But I do need to put in my X value. So this up here, let's see, hide that. So this was, whoops, I didn't realize I was still on the highlighter. Hold on. There we go. So this was probability that X is less than 494. And remember, we can only choose less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. We have to include the endpoints in the calculator, but it's going to be the same probability regardless. So I'm just going to put in that 494. Click compute. And so this is what you would have put in Pearson. 0.135. For the between, switch back over to between. I'm going to clear out my numbers here. I want 497 on the lower end and 512 on the upper end. So my probability that 497 is less than or equal to X, which is less than or equal to 512. So again, this would be your answer in Pearson, would be 0.472, assuming they ask you for 3 decimal places. And then if instead you were drawing and labeling the normal curve for this third one that we have, I guess I could have left the mean and standard deviation, but that's okay. So there's our mean and standard deviation. We want to find the probability that X is at least, so greater than or equal to 523. 523, of course, will be over here. And since we want greater than or equal to, we'll shade to the right. For our calculator, we'll switch back to standard. We need to switch our inequality symbol here to greater than or equal to, but I also need to change my number. 23. And compute. And so the probability that x is greater than or equal to 523 is 0.075. So you only have to do one of these where you are, it's either going to be a less than or equal to, an in between, or a greater than or equal to, where you shade and mark everything on the paper portion. But you'll actually have all three of these different scenarios or different probabilities where you're finding the different directions on the test.